This is Mike Hegley here with Larry Smith, Brad Sturdy. We're talking with Cole Thompson, the man who can talk infinite amounts of college football. And of course, we're talking what can be expected from the Illini this year. Illinois has had a couple big signings out of the transfer portal, at least for Illinois, with Brooks from Texas and Franklin from Old Miss via UTSA. What are you expecting out of this Illini team, especially when you look at the last three games of the season, when all of a sudden they started moving the ball via the pass? We're going to have run it. Caden Fagan's going to be back. How do you predict this team?
They're an interesting team, Mike. They could go one of two ways. Number one, let's start off with the fact that they have a coach that I think fits the mold of what they want in Champaign with Brett Bielema. And I think that having somebody that is coached at the highest level with experience in the SEC and at a program like Wisconsin, it does do wonders for what is expected in practice and what is expected in the weight room and what is expected when you go in game prep. So that's already a win. I feel like that keeping both your coordinators is a really good promise, because if it's the same continuity for this team. And again, you kind of brought this up. Last year, they started moving the football, especially on third down. If I'm not mistaken, they were second or third when it came to third down conversions in the Big Ten in the month of November. So they were doing a good job of at least eating the clock and forcing another opponent to have to play catch up offensively. So you bring in Zachary Franklin, and Zachary Franklin was a guy that last year just never could get on the field when it came to Ole Miss. And it wasn't his own fault. He got hurt at the very beginning of camp. And then by the time that he finally got healthy, everyone had broken out. Jordan Watkins had broken out. Trey Harris had proven that he was a rising star. And so he was moved down the pecking order for a team where in the SEC, the competition is just so fierce. You can't afford to have an elongated amount of missed time if you want to be a part of the system and the product. Because honestly, if you look at what he did at UTSA, it's not like he was a bad player. And it wasn't like he was, just going up against lesser competition. It was everyone else that's coming on in has had more time to learn this offense, go through the reps, build that relationship with Jackson Dart. I have to get to that level, and I'm not sure if I will. Where you can say right now, yes, you can, where he is in Champaign, because if he's had an entire spring, he's had an entire fall, he'll go through the entire fall camp. As long as he stays healthy, that's a vertical threat that can work the middle of the field, the intermediate part. He doesn't drop many passes. He's going to go down in history as one of the greatest group of five wide receivers for UTSA. Like him and Joshua Cephas just put up monster numbers down in San Antonio for years. And then you also get Terrence Brooks, who is a very young, stable, sturdy defensive back that can play a multitude of positions. He's worked at nickel. He's worked on the outside. He's played a little bit of safety. So it gives you that interchangeability, kind of like what you had a few years ago when the secondary for Illinois was a big reason why they were actually one of the best teams in the Big Ten that nobody talked about. You know, when you had Devon Witherspoon and you had Sidney Brown and you had Jacavius Martin. The fact that you were able to just basically play a secondary of five guys that eventually were going to go to the NFL was a huge win. And now you get that tone setter that comes on in from a college football playoff team, and wasn't the guy that was a backup either. He started and played meaningful reps throughout the season, which I think also does a lot of good wonders for you. That game against Kansas is going to be really interesting because we all saw it last year what happened. That's another one where you get hopefully a healthy Jalen Daniels if you're from Lawrence, and they also lose their ace in the hole in Andy Kolenicki because now he's at Penn State. So that offense that was very up-tempo, very vertical passing down the field, that's switching up to Jeff Grimes. And I'm not sure that Grimes is the right replacement for Lance Leipold when you lose a guy like Kolenicki. But also, I'm not sure he's the right offensive coordinator for Jalen Daniels. So if you're able to set that tone, that's a really good win in your back pocket. And then you got to start looking at some other games. So where you feel, where do we need to get a win? At Nebraska versus Purdue. Versus Minnesota, versus Michigan State, Rutgers, Northwestern. Like those are going to be games where you're sitting here and you're saying, can we get down to the finish line? Can we get to the fourth quarter and keep things interesting? Because if you do that, I think that we're talking probably about 8-4 is what should be real expectations. I feel like that at worst, you're talking about 7-5. You're a bowl eligible team. Like that's not the problem that I think many people have. I think the question is, are we going to see what we saw in 2022 come back to fruition maybe not that same level, but good enough to where we feel like that we are trending back toward more so middle tier, middle of the pack of the Big Ten, or are we more so going to be near the bottom? And then we got to throw USC into the mix. Now we got to throw Washington into the mix. And where do we rank among them? Where does UCLA fall in our pathway? That's really where I think that you're trying to set this year. But again, they found a way to replace defensive players last year, but they're also still trying to find a way to replace a lot of other big time names, including a guy like Johnny Newton, which is going to be really challenging from the get-go.
Yeah, defensive line recruiting has probably been the one area that's been the most challenging for Brett Bielema. But then again, that's across the country, because if you have the defensive line, that's when you win titles.
Right. I mean, and again, that's the thing. Like, people all the time will always ask me, well, what's the difference between an Ohio State and a Michigan State? Depth on the defensive line, depth on the offensive line. And people don't want to admit, because they feel like that the flashy players, the Luther Burdens of the world, the Emeka Ibukas of the world, the Marvin Harrison Jr.'s, they're the ones that are going to get you into the college football playoff. Yeah, when you're sitting at 10-2 and there's two teams that you have to decide between, but if you don't have an offensive line, you don't stand a shot of winning a national championship. If you don't have a defensive line that can pressure a quarterback, you don't stand a shot of winning a national championship. Because it's great that you're able to move the football down the field, but it's even better when a defensive end or a defensive tackle can bull rush up the middle, beat an interior lineman, force a quarterback down, and now you're looking at 3rd and 18. Or even better, when you have an interior offensive lineman going up against, say, a Will Anderson or or someone like who'd be another, like a JT Tuimalau, and their ability to take them out of the game. Like, either way you look at it, that's where it comes. So how do you feel about your offensive line? And more importantly, how do you feel about your defensive line depth? What happens if one of your starters goes out? Do you feel like that when you have a guy that's playing 30% of reps a game, he can move it up to 45%? Or can he move it up to 52%? Because if you have that and you feel confident in that, you're trending upward and you feel a lot more better about your situation, primarily late in games, because that's when you start to see the wear and tear on the body, the exhaustion kind of hit in. And it's a big moment for you where that separates rosters that are good rosters and really great ones.
Excellent stuff. If you want to follow Cole Thompson, just go at Mr. Cole Thompson, and you can get one of the best feeds out there. And the man knows his college football. Cole, thanks for being on, and we will be right back after these messages.